Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're looking at sources surrounding, well, a really profound failure in Spanish history. The tragic end of Don Carlos, Prince of Asturias.
That's right. The heir to King Philip II, imprisoned and essentially left to die by his own father.
It's more than just a family dispute, isn't it? It feels like a chilling political decision. A king choosing the crown over his own son.
Exactly. And for you today, we've gathered accounts that try to get past the official story. They paint a pretty visceral picture of his decline.
So our mission here is to unpack that. The reality versus the state-sanctioned narrative.
Precisely. Was it really madness that forced Philip's hand? Or was removing Carlos a brutal, maybe even calculated act to protect the state, especially with everything going on at the time?
And the sources create this sense of dread immediately. You get descriptions of his final months. Absolute darkness is biting cold coming through the stone walls.
And the footsteps, the constant quiet footsteps of guards or spies circling his cell, that must have been terrifying.
It's such a stark contrast, isn't it? The golden heir, groomed for this massive empire, reduced to basically rotting in a tomb, scared of every noise.
That environment, the darkness, the fear, the isolation, it was arguably the final weapon used against him. But to understand why Philip felt it was necessary, we really need to look at Carlos himself long before the imprisonment.
Okay, let's get into his temperament. The sources consistently describe him as, well, volatile.
Volatile is putting it mildly. One courtier wrote, his personality could shift like a storm at sea.
He had charm, apparently, some wit.
Yes, but it could vanish in an instant, replaced by these sudden, terrifying rages. The court seems to have lived in fear of them.
And we have specific examples, right? Things that shocked even the hardened Spanish court.
Oh, definitely. The chroniclers who, were loyal to Philip detail incidents like him throwing a servant down a flight of stairs over something minor.
Stairs. Just like that.
Just like that. Or shattering a priceless Venetian mirror in a fit of anger. Things that signal deep instability.
But there's a crucial piece of context we need here, isn't there? Something beyond just bad behavior.
Yes, and it's vital. We can't ignore the Habsburg factor. That dynasty was notorious for inbreeding. Many historians now strongly suggest Carlos likely suffered from congenital issues, perhaps neurological problems tied to those inherited traits.
So his madness might not have been, say, a purely psychological or political thing. It could have been biological.
It's very possible, a biological time bomb perhaps, which makes Philip's reaction, while still brutal, maybe understandable from a ruler's perspective. He saw a fundamental flaw in his heir.
A flaw that threatened the dynasty, the empire itself. And Philip II, he wasn't exactly known for warmth, was he?
Not at all. Cold, calculating, distant. Especially with Carlos. The sources suggest Carlos constantly felt this weight, this unspoken question from his father. Can this boy rule, or will he destroy everything?
There's that incident when Carlos was young, right? About a missed lesson.
Yes, Philip struck him. Carlos was only 12. It really set the tone, didn't it? Duty. Rigid adherence, not affection. The state always came before the son.
And the needs of the state were huge then, particularly with the situation in the Netherlands.
Exactly. That's the critical political backdrop. The Dutch revolt was Spain's biggest headache, a massive military drain, a strategic nightmare.
And Carlos started getting involved, or expressing sympathy.
He did. Whether it was a genuine conviction, a bid for power, or just youthful rebellion, we don't know for sure. But he started openly sympathizing with the Dutch rebels. For Philip, that was absolute treason, political heresy.
And this leads to the breaking point.
It seems so. The story goes that Carlos, drunk maybe on stolen wine, stormed the royal chapel. And he wasn't just drunk and disorderly, he was shouting political statements, oaths against his father's policies regarding the Netherlands.
So Philip finds him like this.
In the chapel, yes. And the sources suggest that in that moment, Philip didn't see his troubled son anymore. He saw a direct threat to national security, an adversary.
And once he saw him that way,
the decision was made, the dynastic imperative, the need to protect the empire, overruled everything else, which led to the arrest. Swift and brutal.
Imagine that. Waking up to the sound of boots marching down the corridor. Not just one or two guards, but dozens, grim-faced.
And led by the Duke of Elba, Fernando Alvarez de Toledo.
Alba. That name carries weight. The man known for his ruthless suppression of the Dutch rebels.
Sending Alba sent a very clear message. This wasn't about discipline, this was about treason. The charge was laid immediately.
And Carlos, did he resist?
He tried. Desperately. There are accounts of him laughing, this brittle, terrified sound, and lunging for a dagger he kept nearby. But they overpowered him quickly, bound him.
And the rumors started swirling immediately, plotting with the rebels, trying to poison the king.
Yes, those narratives surfaced almost instantly, conveniently justifying the king's actions after the fact, shifting the perception from troubled prince to dangerous traitor.
It's the controlling of the story, and that final image described in the sources as they drag Carlos away.
He sees his father, Philip II, standing at the top of the staircase, motionless, like a statue, just watching his son's descent.
Cold calculation, erasing a mistake for the good of the empire. That's how Philip likely saw it.
It seems so. And that mistake was then buried alive, effectively. The conditions in his cell were horrific, seemingly designed to speed up his physical and mental collapse.
Complete darkness, he said.
Total darkness. Sources described the air thick with mildew, the stench of his own unwashed body. His clothes apparently just rotted into rags on him, stripped of everything.
The physical toll must have been immense.
And the mental, imagine trying to keep track of time. There are descriptions of his nails, broken and bloody from scraping at the mortar between the stones, just trying to make a mark, any mark.
Constantly sick, too. Fevers, sweats.
Cycles of fever and chills, yes. And starvation or near starvation. That constant gnawing hunger adding to the misery.
And the psychological horror. This is where sensory deprivation really does its work, right?
Absolutely. It's a known technique. His mind started to unravel. Delirium, hallucinations, seeing phantoms, hearing rats.
The rats. They feature prominently in some accounts.
They do. At first terrifying, then apparently he grew almost accustomed to them. Their squeaking sounds becoming like, well, one source says laughter in the dark. The guards reported hearing him scream, begging for death sometime.
Just awful. But even with this official narrative of madness building, there were whispers, weren't there? People questioning it.
Yes, crucially. Not everyone bought the official lines. Some loyalists, some courtiers wondered, what if he's not mad? What if he actually knows something? What if he's right about something?
There's that account from the scribe.
Right, the scribe who supposedly listened at the door, risking everything. He reported hearing Carlos rasp out something haunting. The crown was glass. The throne was ash.
Wow, seeing the fragility behind the power. Maybe that was part of his madness, seeing things too clearly.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the point where the political justification needed, well, a medical stamp of approval. If Carlos was a threat deemed mad, they needed a doctor to say so.
Enter Dr. Mendoza, summoned by the king.
Yes, Dr. Mendoza. And his orders from Philip were chillingly specific. Examine the prince. Do not treat him under any circumstances.
Just observe the decline. Document it.
Essentially, yes. And Mendoza's report reads like a document of horror, professionally speaking. He found Carlos skeletal, covered in festering sores, ulcers from the chains rubbing his skin raw.
Ribs showing.
Jutting out like the bars of a cage, as Mendoza apparently described it. The doctor was reportedly furious, telling the guards, this isn't an examination, it's witnessing a murder.
Did he do anything? Could he do anything?
He was under strict orders, but one account mentions a small act, almost a rebellion. He supposedly had some lavender oil.
Lavender.
Yes. A scent Carlos hadn't smelled since he was a child. Apparently, it was a scent his mother, Maria Manuela, used to wear. Mendoza dabbed a tiny bit on the prince's wrist.
A moment of kindness. Human connection.
And in that moment, Carlos, despite the fever, supposedly looked right at Mendoza and asked this question, do I seem mad to you?
That's the core of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
What did Mendoza say? Could he even answer truthfully?
It was incredibly risky. But the story goes that as Mendoza turned to leave, he whispered back, you seem like a man who remembers too much.
Remembers too much. That changes everything.
It really does. It suggests Carlos wasn't just unstable. Maybe he knew things. Dangerous things. Things Philip needed silenced.
That kind of things. Secrets about the empire, military matters, maybe even about his mother's death, which was quite sudden.
We can only speculate. But the possibility hangs there. The madness becomes the perfect cover to erase inconvenient knowledge along with the inconvenient air.
And the final indignities. The hunger must have been unbearable.
Beyond unbearable. It stripped away everything. The sources describe a point where, after days with no food at all, his survival instinct took over completely.
This is the rat incident.
Yes.
Yeah.
His revulsion fighting his body's absolute need. He managed to catch a rat in the darkness. Snapped its neck.
And ate it.
Devoured it. Raw, apparently weeping while he did it, the metallic taste of blood. But his body just screamed for sustenance. A prince reduced to that, the ultimate degradation.
But there was one small light in that darkness. Someone showed some pity.
There was. Anna, a young servant girl, not acting on orders, but out of, well, memory and compassion. She remembered Carlos from years before when he was a young prince tossing oranges to children in the palace courtyard.
So she felt sorry for him.
Deeply sorry. And she knew the risk. It was treason, basically. But she started stealing scraps of food's stale bread, maybe some cheese, water, and bringing them to his cell.
Did anyone see her?
She described shoving the food through the slot and seeing him fall on it like a wild animal. It terrified her. The captain of the guard apparently walked past once while she was there, but just ignored her. Maybe complicity, maybe just exhaustion. But she kept coming back.
She was there near the end.
She was. In his final hours, Carlos was lost in fever, in visions, seeing his mother again, seeing his betrothed, Isabella, the queen he was supposed to marry.
And that final, imagined confrontation with his father.
Yes. The sources recount this sort of fever dream exchange. Philip standing over him, the king demanding, "You should have been stronger."
And Carlos's reply.
Coughing, weak, but hitting right at the core. "And you should have been a father." After which, Philip just turned and walked away in the vision.
But Anna stayed.
Anna stayed with him. No more food, just comfort, a damp cloth on his forehead. She reminded him of the sour oranges that shared memory. She promised she'd stay until the end.
And he died quietly.
The sources say his last breath was soft, almost peaceful. Unburdened, one account says.
So, looking back at all this, Philip II got what he wanted, didn't he? Stability for the empire, his power consolidated.
He did. The crown won over kinship. Don Carlos became this tragic warning, a casualty of the brutal demands of absolute rule.
And it brings us back to that central question, fueled by Mendoza's comment. Was he truly mad, or was madness just the label slapped on him by the winner?
The sources certainly lean towards the latter. That quote resonates. The world called him mad, but madness, he knew, was the only sane response to a world like this. It suggests his reactions, however extreme, were rooted in the reality he faced.
It really drives home how history is written by the survivors, doesn't it? Philip needed the madness narrative to justify his actions.
Absolutely. It was the foundation for erasing his son from the line of succession, both literally and figuratively.
So, the final thought for you listening. And we take Mendoza seriously. That Carlos seemed like a man who remembered too much. What critical truths might have died with him? What secrets about the Spanish crown, political dealings, military weaknesses, maybe even royal scandals were buried forever in that dark, silent cell?
You really have to consider how easily inconvenient memories, inconvenient people can be erased when power is absolute. The narrative left behind is often the one most useful to those still standing.